on to our October PLC. As always, if you have any questions during this particular PLC, feel free to drop them in. But I will go on and introduce our wonderful guest speaker today. So our guest speaker has been sharing the importance of a promise with people around the world and is no stranger to the Bar Network. Alex Sheen is the founder of Because I Said I Would, a social movement and nonprofit dedicated to the betterment of humanity through promises made and kept. He is someone who truly honors commitment. Alex once walked over 240 miles across the entire state of Ohio in 10 days to fulfill a promise. Alex has impacted millions of people with the Because I Said I Would message through the viral nature of social media. His work has been featured on ABC World News with Diane Sawyer, CNN, the Los Angeles Times, the Today Show, and many other programs. So please help me welcome Alex Sheen.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Bar Center, it's good to be back with you. Angela, Jen, Brian, Kurt, Dick, I see all you guys out there. Really looking forward to this program as well. Ariana, I'm seeing you in the chat as Dr. Thomas. Really appreciate this moment. Wanted to start off on a strong note, so I'm gonna play a video of a dog riding a horse, okay? We're gonna start with the animals being bros video. I've been spending a lot of time on the internet, as everybody has during this pandemic. I'm really into cats on Roombas, right? My favorite part is a real sharp turn, right? Love the pivot. And a personal favorite, animals being jerks. We could just watch this for 45 minutes and that would be a good keynote. But I think in this pandemic, even since we last saw each other, for those who have seen me speak, and I know we've got a lot of new folks as well, we just been spending a lot of time doom scrolling and stuff, right? Looking at the internet, watching posts go by, and thinking sometimes to ourselves, you know what? I wonder what it would be like. I wonder what it would be like to go viral. Right? I wonder what it would be like to be that person who posted that thing that's everywhere now, even for 15 minutes. What would that be like? Well, fortunately or unfortunately for me, I've gone through that journey. It comes with a lot of different and interesting moments. I remember one time, the sixth richest person in the world invited me to Guatemala to speak to 100 billionaires at the same time, one of the largest gatherings of wealth in the history of humanity. I closed the second day, Colin Powell closed the first day. A lot of weird stuff happens. And so I want to share with you a story, a viral story that is from Cleveland, involves me in a way. And let's get started with that, right? So I'm proudly from Cleveland, Ohio, where the Cleveland Browns have finally learned how to play football, right? It's nice. All that needed to happen was for the whole entire world to shut down for a while so they could focus, right? Because it used to not be like that, right? Cleveland Browns, this guy's got a jersey that says, "I cry at night," right? So that's what it's like to be from Cleveland. And I want to ask you the question, where are you calling in from, right? I know we got a little distribution places, people everywhere. We got some Rachel's in Maine. We've got Carrie in Minneapolis. We got a DC, Minnesota, Arizona, Hampton, San Diego, Wisconsin. Good stuff, right? So for me, I'm proudly from Cleveland, Ohio, and in most every one of my speeches I mention it. But there was this one day where I felt genuinely, genuinely ashamed to be from Ohio, and there's no like joke to follow that. The day was May 6th of 2013, when a news story would go viral around the world to the highest degree. It was the story of 3 women from Cleveland who, after 10 years, had finally been discovered, found.
Fox News Alert with new details breaking in the remarkable story of 3 young women who escaped a home in Cleveland, Ohio.
Now, the amount of time that these women were missing It's simply extraordinary, hard to imagine. For 9, 10, in one case, 11 years, they disappeared in separate incidents, years apart, but within blocks of each other.
Inside that house on Seymour Avenue, the young women were locked up and chained in the basement.
We can't imagine what these women went through. Can't imagine the pain the families have endured.
These girls, these women are so strong, stronger than I am. I will tell you that much. And they all have a positive attitude.
Think about that. How would you make it through? How would you be strong and have a positive attitude? I guess it'd be the only way to live.
That house is 6 miles from where I'm sitting right now. And I remember that day somewhat specifically, the day of their freedom. It was May 6th. I remember May 6th because it happens to be my birthday. I remember thinking to myself, what if I had 10 of my birthdays stolen from me? What would my view of this world even be? If you could talk to one of those women on the day of their freedom, what if they were to say to you, I've lost my faith in humanity? Well, I don't know what I would say back, not after everything they've been through. And to be honest, even as an average everyday person, it seems like it gets easier to lose your faith in humanity. Turn on the news for a little bit and things aren't so great out there. But if working in charity, working in schools has taught me anything, the news doesn't always cover the good stuff. There are good people still left in this world. There are good people in the city of Cleveland. And I know for a fact that there are some good people on this call right now. You know, the type of person who wakes up knowing that the odds are against them, that to be the offset, the counterbalance to the suffering in this world, it's not going to be an easy path. Someone has to walk it. And so I wanted to make a promise to Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight to give them 10 days of my life, just a drop in the bucket in honor of their 10 years of perseverance, to raise awareness for the victims of sexual violence, and to raise funding for these 3 women so early on in the recovery. I promised 10 days. I promised that in 10 days, I would walk 240 miles across the entire state of Ohio. 502,000 steps all the way to the house of their imprisonment. I asked people to join me on this journey, to show their support for those who had been hurt. But it wasn't just about a walk, because honestly, that is only symbolic. It's about sharing and showing kindness. Because after you have been hurt, bullied, suffered in this life, maybe you still need to know that there are complete strangers out there who still care about complete strangers. And so on June 15th of 2013, I would begin a journey. In Friendship Park, Cincinnati, Ohio, to begin this walk, I would take my right hand and I would put it in the Ohio River, which is disgusting. We gotta take care of the environment, people. So I, Purell my hands off or whatever, and I would walk approximately a marathon a day every day for 10 days straight, 10 to 12 hours of walking every day in about 90-degree heat. Now, this is just a country road in Ohio, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but let me just say I'm walking down this road, and there are some stereotypes about Ohio that are true, okay? This is like a 20-foot tall cow the size of a house. Like, people, this isn't like a state fair. This is just somebody's front yard. This is just like some dude trying to establish dominance in the neighborhood or something, right? So I'd see that, it would make me laugh. I keep walking. Maybe I see a sign that makes me think, like this one. Never let the things you want make you forget the things you have. It's pretty deep, Pretty deep for a guy trying to sell air conditioners. This guy's having like a full-blown midlife crisis back there. Someone give that dude a hug, And I could show you all kinds of pictures and videos, dogs chasing me, all kinds of nonsense. But you start to notice something consistent in these images. You'd start to notice that I'm the only person walking in them. And that's because for about 95% of the time, I walk by myself. Now, just about every news station in the state, covered this journey. And I wanted people to join to help fundraise for this cause, but, not many people came. And I guess promises in the beginning are exciting, right? You're going down a new path, something for the first time. You're going to help somebody, whatever. That starts to wane pretty quickly. I remember being about 180 miles into this walk. It's basically pitch black. I'm in the middle of nowhere, maybe just a little bit of moon. These cars and trucks, they're flying by, and they can't quite see me. So to make sure I don't get hit, I have to walk in this ditch. But my feet are blistered over, they're cut open. I'm in a type of pain that I genuinely had never even felt before. And all you want to do in that moment is just sit in the softness of the grass, and you just want to quit. You want to say maybe helping people, maybe the work of charity isn't actually for me. Maybe I'm a little bit in too deep on this. Maybe I'll go back to that software company and play it safe. Well, that reminds me of an old quote that I think about a lot. A ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are built for. You know? Sometimes we have to take risks. Sometimes we have to become uncomfortable to make this world what we believe in. And yes, promises get lonely. Sometimes they have to be kept alone. But I also know this, that if you work hard enough for what you believe in, if you show the world your self-control, your determination, you do that for long enough, and maybe the world will believe in the cause that you believe in. Maybe the path of hard work is not easy, nor is it fair. But sometimes that's just how the world works. I would be joined in the last 10,000 feet by people from across the region. They would walk with me down West 25th into the heart of Cleveland, Ohio. Now this road, Seymour Avenue, where that house is only about an 1/8 mile long. I would complete this walk, and this woman insisted on being the first person to give me a hug. It was Gina de Jesus' mother. She finally had her child back after her daughter was kidnapped for 10 years. Later on, we'd be sent this picture of Gina herself, the survivor, with her new puppy. There's a lot of things wrong with the world, and we can't fix it all. But going down that path of believing that nothing we do matters is not only wildly unproductive, perhaps the most dangerous idea in the world is the thought that the actions of one person don't matter. Because when everybody starts believing that, nobody does anything. And so I've made some promises in my day to better humanity in whatever way. But that's not actually the viral story of Because I Said I Would. For those of you who were on last time, you'll know it came from somewhere else. This is a picture of my dad here, my old man. My father was the person I learned the importance of a promise from. If he said he was going to be there for you, he showed up. It's not that he came to every one of my lacrosse games as a kid, but if he said he was going to be there, you didn't stare into the bleachers wondering if he was going to show up. You just were looking for where he was sitting. And there's something about that you don't appreciate when you're a kid. You know, you work with kids, you know that. But as you grow up, you start to think about, who the most reliable person in your life is. Unfortunately for my father, he would be diagnosed with stage 4 small cell lung cancer on September 4th, 2012. My father passed away. I introduced the concept that I called a promise card at his funeral. A simple piece of paper, you write a promise on it, you give it to someone, you tell them, I'm going to fulfill this promise, and when I do, I earn it back. I offered to send 10 promise cards to anybody, anywhere in the world at no cost to anyone. And that is the viral story of Because I Said I Would. It's funny because it says 9.81 million promise cards and to 178 countries, but I got to update this graphic because now it's 13.6 million. The movement continues to grow. And while I could tell you stories about promises that I've made and kept and what I've learned from them, the truth is most of that lesson wasn't necessarily learned first person. What can all these promise cards teach you? How do you make it easier to keep a commitment? right? In tens of thousands of conversations I've had with folks, I want to share with you 5 habits and tactics, perspectives that I've learned from people just like you. And hopefully even in Q&A, we get to hear some of your thoughts too. These are 5 perspectives, and they're not the same that I went over last time. So for the half of the folks who were perhaps here, these are going to be new. So hang in there. Let's talk about the first one, and we'll call that pre-commitment. Okay, pre-commitment, like a lot of things, is best explained with an example. Did you know that you can walk into a casino, right? You can walk into a casino, you can show them your ID, and you can say, hey, never let me back in here. Like, I have a problem, and I want you to scan this ID, and I want you to put me on a list. Never allow me back in here. You see what that is pre-commitment. It's taking an action in the present that physically limits your ability to break a promise in the future. It's a scenario when you know you don't quite have the self-control, but there is something you can do about it. You can go around the need for self-control at all. Now, this example of a gambling addiction is maybe not something that's in your life. And so let's bring it a little bit closer, at least closer to my life, right? When I go, and I travel quite a bit, or I used to, I guess, when I go and I'm eating, like even at an airport, any sort of Mexican restaurant, what is the first thing on average they're going to plop down on that table right in front of you? Oh, you know it, right? A piping hot basket of chips. And what is going to happen to those chips if you leave me alone with them, right? I will eat every single last one of them. I don't necessarily have the self-control to stop myself from doing that. So pre-commitment is telling the waiter or waitress, hey, I'm gonna actually pass on the chips, and they're gonna say, well, sir, they're free, don't worry about it. And I was like, well, it's actually, we'll just save them, it's okay, right? Because I know I don't have that self-control. I'll eat that entire basket. And sometimes at night, folks will feel this sensation when it comes to looking at social media, looking at your phone deep into 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Pre-commitment would have you take that phone and put it in another room, put it across the room, make it more difficult for you to break that promise in an action that you can take right now. So pre-commitment conserves your self-control tank, and you can do that by creating physical distance between you and what you're struggling with, or delete or destroy it, right? Is it an app? Is it a credit card that you're overspending, right? Or automating a transaction, right? What would be an example of that? Some people give to charity, but maybe they forget, or they want to stay committed to something, but the task they can't remember. And so they just say, oh, well, I'll just give every single month. And then lastly, you can actually make it sometimes another person's responsibility. You see this with drinking and driving, right? You give your keys to somebody, right? Again, that could overlap with physical distance, but making it someone else's responsibility can keep a promise. And there is a huge example of this in our cause of Because I Said I Would in all of these promise cards. Actually, the one that went more viral than anyone ever has, and I believe ever will. I mean, to the tune of 150 million views, right? A young man, I remember, messaged me on Facebook, and he told me that he wanted to write this promise card. It says, I will take full responsibility for what I've done. And what he did was he killed a man. He was drinking and driving. He went the wrong way down the highway, and he killed a person. There were no charges pressed against him for over 4 months. He messaged me saying that he wanted to make a commitment to record a confession video, to send his journey down an irreversible path, to take responsibility for ending Vincent Kinzani's life, a Navy veteran, a stranger to Matthew Cordell. I recorded that confession video. It was released to YouTube. Matthew Cordell would be arrested, arraigned, sentenced, and he served time in prison, basically to the highest level, because that video created a level of pre-commitment. Once it was sent out, it couldn't be reversed. It's what he wanted, but he knew it was a hard journey. I've learned a lot about pre-commitment, but let's move on to the second thought in habits and tactics that can help us keep promises certainly during difficult times. And we're going to talk about the fallibility of human memory. We're going to talk about that through this number, 15,942. 15,942 is the average number of words an American speaks in a given day. This is a study done by the University of Arizona at Tucson. They put just like an electronic recording device around the necks of college students. There isn't actually a big variance between males and females in the number of words we speak a day. But imagine that massive number of things we say as a pie chart. What percentage of them is a promise? And I'm not saying the word promise, right? I'm saying anything that is a statement telling someone you're going to do something, like the dictionary definition of a promise. Maybe you say, I will do that, or I'll do that, or of course, or I'm going to. Even literally the word yes. The word yes is a promise to another person. That person starts organizing their day, their week, their month around your commitment. And so we make a lot of promises every day, and it's not certainly a huge part of the pie chart, but with such a big number, even a sliver of that is simply too much for you to physically remember. This is just kind of too soft and fuzzy up here. It's not a physical hard drive. So if you value your reputation when it comes to your promises, don't trust your memory. Make sure that you're writing down your promises in one way or another. And for me, I physically react to my promises. I pick up my phone. I check my calendar. I gain confidence in yes or no. What do I mean by that? I look at my calendar, and if it's too bunched up, I can look someone in the face without too much hesitancy and say, oh, I'm sorry, man, I'm busy that day. And sometimes those no's are what preserve the time for the promises you've already made. And then you just make that calendar entry. I do not trust my memory whatsoever. I realized that on this journey of trying to get my batting average up to represent these words as best I could, I was just breaking promises constantly because of my memory. And on top of that, even when it was genuinely true, I just forgot, like I would have done it. I go to the next person, right? Maybe I'm talking to Kristen or Kathleen or Andrea, any of you, right? And I go to you and say, oh man, I'm sorry, I just forgot. What do? You don't believe me, right? Because that is the human condition. We're tired of broken promises in our life, and we're sort of skeptical of it. So don't let the fallibility of human memory affect your reputation, especially with the kids. Then the next thing I want to talk about is a concept called an accountability threshold. I'm kind of going all over the place, but I think each one of these has a good nugget behind them. Okay, accountability threshold. Let's just imagine with your mind's eye for a second some people that you interact with a lot. Maybe it's even coworkers, maybe it's family members, it doesn't matter. Picture a few people and float a number over their head. Okay, you're going to float a number over their head, and that number is going to represent how good that person is at taking accountability. In other words, how much accountability can that person kind of take on the chin? They, admit that they're wrong before they start deflecting to other people, blaming other people, talking about other conditions, right? So somebody who's like an 89, right? That person says to you, listen, I'm not here to waste your time. I apologize for being 10 minutes late. I'm sorry. And there's no thoughts of traffic and weather and things like that. That person just takes it, right? And you respect them more for that. Versus a 14, which is this like sort of teenage Freddy Krueger looking avatar. I don't know, it's weird. But the point is that someone with a lower number immediately starts deflecting. Oh, well, you remember that time when you were late and well, it's weather. I can't do anything about my car. And that's what accountability threshold means. It's the amount of personal responsibility someone can emotionally tolerate before they begin blaming, deflecting, or attacking others, right? And so I want to ask you our first poll question. My accountability threshold is better than the average person, right? You think and the number is nebulous, it's made up, but just in general, we're going to pop up that poll question now, punch in your answer. My accountability threshold is better than average. I agree or disagree. We're going to close this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right? Let's take a look. Okay, 81% of people think they're better than average. Okay, think about what I just said for a second. If we got any fans of math out there, that is statistically impossible. You see what I'm saying? You can only have 49.99 whatever percent of people be better than average. So either this entire group is just exceptional, which could definitely be true. I don't want to say they're not, right? But you get what I'm saying. Sometimes self-awareness, very specifically with this issue, is hard to have. So just try to keep it in mind. Remember that when people are holding you accountable, it's not always a personal attack, even though it feels like it, right? That's almost our biological reaction to it. What it really is, hopefully, is the recognition of that something went wrong and we want to fix it. You know, I like to look at accountability and compassion on the same level in regards to their value as characteristic traits, right? As almost moral values. Meaning if I were to see a kid, fall down, scrape their knee, and then another kid comes over and picks them up and says, "Are you okay?" Gives them a hug. I'd be like, "Oh my God, that's amazing," right? These kids are being compassionate. I want to see more compassion in this world. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. We should have more of that. That's the same feeling I have when I hold myself accountable for mistakes. When I'm about to walk into a room knowing that I made the error, I forgot, or I didn't do it, I say, this is a good time. This is a good thing to see in the world. I want more of this. I want more moments where people say, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm taking ownership. That improves the world, as hard as those moments may be. Just a quick fun fact on this thought of surveys about being better than average. 90% of Americans think they're better than average at driving, right? So don't feel too guilty. This is just the way the survey mechanism works. I'm just trying to trick you is what I'm saying. Okay, so accountability threshold. I get a lot of questions about this regarding not like, oh, how do I improve my accountability threshold? How do I improve the accountability thresholds of other people, right? And that continues this energy of pointing fingers, but let's go with that energy. How do we increase an accountability threshold? Well, first, we want to position accountability as a strength. Say things like, hey, a lot of people aren't strong enough to do that, to take accountability, right? And I really appreciate that. Like, call it out, really make it a moment, position it continuously in your own life and in the lives of those you work with as a strength. You got to highlight it more and almost exaggerate that moment. And model strong apologies that include consequences, right? I said this a little earlier, but I'm not here to waste your time. I apologize. Model behavior, as you guys know, in social emotional learning and in basically every form of human behavior, it's really important. And then also I would say no accountability during accountability. What do I mean by that? When you're holding somebody accountable, don't tell them that they're bad at accountability. The pressure is too much. Like, save that lesson for another time. They're not going to listen to you. You wouldn't listen if it was the other way around. It's just too much emotion. So just pick some random zone where the relationship is great. Talk about accountability, why it's a strength. Model it even yourself. Maybe you use that lesson as not to say, hey, this is how you apologize. Apologize to that person. Call a special meeting. Meet with the kid, whatever it is, to say, I'm sorry, in a pretty legitimate way. Okay, so that is number 3. Let's get to number 4 in our habits and tactics and talk about the invisible promise killer. Before a promise even gets a chance to exist, what stops it from happening? I've seen that in many different cases, scenarios, physical locations, and one of those locations includes this aerial picture. Now, this is probably a weird configuration of buildings, but if you stare at it long enough, you might come to the conclusion that this is a maximum security prison. This is a prison in Pendleton, Indiana, where the minimum sentence is 12 years to life without parole. It's a real Shawshank Redemption kind of place. I mean, built in 1922, there's terrible HVAC. It's not a good place to be. Well, because I said I would, as a charity, not only do we have programs in schools, but we also have programs in juvenile detention centers and prisons where we teach self-control, accountability, all that good stuff, right? And our chapters in prisons will actually make and keep promises to help others in need. They sewed face masks for their community during the pandemic. So, why am I saying this? It all gets to this one moment when I was in Pendleton, Indiana's prison. I was visiting our program administrator there. His name is Jeff King. Now, Jeff's worked there for a long time, and him and I were going through the metal detector security, taking your phone and all sharp objects, things like that. And we're just kind of chatting. This is routine for him. And I'm asking him questions to help kind of design programming, think through things. And so I position this question to Jeff. I say, Jeff, if you could press a button, just boom, you press a button, and all of a sudden, every single inmate in this entire institution was automatically like 30% better at anything. What does that button do? Do you give him a GED? I thought maybe he's going to say something like self-control or whatever, but that's not what Jeff said. Jeff said, Alex, I would give these men a sense of self-worth. And I said, Jeff, what do you mean like self-worth? I mean, I work with prisons, but you're in here all the time, so of course you have a better perspective. But to me, maybe as an outsider, it seems like these men have almost too much self-confidence, right? To the point of extreme cockiness that no matter what they do, they're always right. And is that not the case? And he says, Alex, you have to realize that many of these men, when they were little boys, they grew up in very difficult situations. Okay, and Jeff said, I'm not trying to excuse their behavior, but they were literally told as children that they were garbage, that they were never going to amount to anything. Okay, and if you do that for long enough, you tell somebody that for long enough, you know what happens? They start to believe you. A lot of these inmates have very strong limiting beliefs, and that's really just recognizing a moment that if a person doesn't believe they can get better, if they don't think of a better future is possible, why even try? That is the invisible promise killer, limiting beliefs that we impose on ourselves in a number of different ways, or of course society can do as well. So I want to ask this question in the chat to your level of comfort. What is a limiting belief that a person or society told you when you were a kid? Right? I remember as a little Asian American boy, I don't think no one ever said it directly, but I thought like, oh, I guess I'm not going to be an athlete. Like, I guess Asian kids aren't athletes, or it doesn't seem like I'm supposed to be good in school or something. I don't know. I don't know if that was ever overtly told to me, but I have a chip on my shoulder the size of a city block, so I took personal offense to that thought and played college lacrosse and all that good stuff. But we all have these limited beliefs in life, and I want to bring this to a practical place, right? Let's talk about the 4 types of negative thinking that create those limiting beliefs. And we're going to start with the concept called focusing on the negative. It's pretty straightforward, right? Focusing on the negative is that no matter what's happening, a bunch of good stuff could be happening. You just stare at what's wrong, right? A good example of this, have you ever taken a child to like Disneyland, right? Disney World, right? It's supposed to be a great time like these pictures might suggest, but if you take a kid to Disney World, Disneyland, one bad thing goes wrong and they just obsess about it. It's something that kids do, right? Focusing on the negative, almost by definition, is a tendency to register negative stimuli more readily and dwell on those events in a manner that is just out of balance of reality, with reality. It's a choice that you're just staring at what's wrong. So that's one way that we create limiting beliefs and negative thinking in our life. The next way, I've touched on a little bit, but let's give it a phrase, is negative self-labeling, right? And I would see that sometimes in the journey of our supporters, like this gentleman. He posted these pictures on Instagram constantly, but with no context. It just said 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, there's nothing. Until this last one, he commented 9 months sober. But imagine, let's just pretend for a moment that in this gentleman's life, his uncles are alcoholics, his dad was an alcoholic, his grandpa was an alcoholic. He's been told that he is an alcoholic, he believes that. If you attach your entire identity to the challenge that you face, it has incredible limiting factors forces on the way that you think what's possible. And it's not to say that alcoholism or alcoholics with genetic predisposition to alcoholism, all those things, it's not to say that they're not real, but that shouldn't be our entire identity. So negative self-labeling is defining one's own identity to the challenges, shortfalls, in a manner that limits that person's realistic ability to achieve, right? If you're an alcoholic, well, I shouldn't try these things. That kills promises. Next thing I want to talk about is all or nothing thinking, and I'm going to give a ridiculous example of all or nothing thinking, and that comes in our partnership and our work with Children's Miracle Network hospitals, okay? So these kids are in college at Gonzaga University. They write a promise card that says, they're going to raise $25,000 for the kids. Now, these kids sometimes have terminal cancer and different things. A lot of the conditions, of course, recoverable. But if you were an all or nothing thinker, and this is going to sound ridiculous by intention, you would say to yourself, these kids' medical bills might be $100,000 a day sometimes. What is $25,000? If I can't pay everything, if I can't help, why even try? That is absurd. Right? But the thing is, in lesser and different ways, we have this in our life. We think in absolutes such as never, forever, causing an inability to see alternatives and solutions. So life is rarely all or nothing, and we got to spot that and call it out when it happens. Lastly, I'm going to talk about catastrophizing and the 4 types of negative thinking. One place this happens a lot is at weddings and things like that. We see a lot of promise cards at weddings, but you can imagine the stress of the day, the cake doesn't get delivered on time, and the whole entire wedding is going to be ruined, and that's going to affect the trajectory of our marriage, and we might as well get a divorce now. It's ridiculous, but I'm trying to explain with extremes because catastrophizing happens to all of us. A thought process that identifies an unfavorable outcome to an event and then decides if that outcome happens, the results will be disaster. It will domino into the rest of our lives. We got to be careful of catastrophizing. So I want to ask this poll question now. Which one of these 4 types of negative thinking do you actually experience the most in your own life? It's different for all of us, right? But we're going to pop this up as a poll question right now. Go ahead and punch in your answer. Is it focusing on the negative self-labeling, all or nothing thinking, or catastrophizing? What's limiting your view of the world? It's natural, it's human, but we're going to close this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's go ahead, share those results, see what people are thinking. Pretty even heat between the first 3. Focus on negative thinking, negative self-labeling, all or nothing thinking, all pretty close, with catastrophizing coming in 4th. So maybe you do one of these things, maybe you do all of them, right? We'll close those poll results out, and the only thing that I'm saying here as a habit is just identify that moment. When you're in negative thinking, it doesn't matter, could be reasonable, could actually be good, could keep the kids safe, could help protect someone's health. It could do a lot of things. Negative thinking can be beneficial, but regardless, I like to identify and say, right now I'm kind of catastrophizing, and just say it, and that kind of just stops it by giving it a name. And if I'm doing that too much, I say, Alex, that's not a way to live. We need to make this promise. Sometimes you have to take risks, and calling it out helps. Last thing I want to talk about is I don't have to. It's a phrase that was said to me after a speech in Akron, Ohio. I don't have to, and it relates to cognitive reframing or perception reorientation, but is also best made with an example. Okay, so these are my 2 babies right here. Okay, so there's Tubu on the top, Bubba on the bottom. Right now they're in an RV in my driveway, so they don't bark during this. So I'm here to say they hate you all, right, for making them go out there, personal vendetta against you. No, that's not the point. The point is, every morning, including this one, at about 6 o'clock in the morning, what does Tubu do? It's always Tubu. He puts his paws on my chest while I'm dead asleep. He licks my face and he says, Daddy, I want to go outside, and he wakes me up, right? And I say to myself in that moment, and you may feel obligations like this, it's like, oh, I have to do this, right? Or why do I have to do, no, I have to do this. There's so much stuff in my life I have to do, right? Nah, right? So I had a dog last year. Her name was Kimchi. I had her for 14 years. She passed away. What I would give to you for one more day with her, I get those days with these two. I don't have to let Tubu and Bubba out. I get to. I get to live in a house that even allows me to have dogs. Some people don't have that. I don't have any shared walls. They can bark as much as they want. I don't have to call my grandparents. I'm 36 years old. I still have grandparents to call. I don't have to do anything. I get to. And so that changing one's mind has multiple dimensions to it. But what I'm careful to do is not focus on my feelings. My physical feelings are visceral. Like if I'm angry or sad or like I don't know if you can just turn those around. But what I can do is change my thoughts. My feelings may not follow very quickly, but it's very easy to say I don't have to do this. I get to. And if I stick with that thought for long enough, my feelings will chase that thought. So my question for the live chat right now is, what's one thing you get to do? On the hard days, you might say, like Katrina's saying, I have to go to work. No, I get to go to work. Some people have trouble with employment. Some people have disabilities that may not allow them to provide them for themselves in a way that maybe you can. There's a lot of even kids, right, Kelly? Great point. We work with schools, and yeah, they can sometimes be brats, but you actually get to wake up and change the trajectory of human history. You get to shape and form and create a better world through the human beings that are going to live in that world. And Megan saying, I get to do cardio. Again, some challenges with physical disabilities, one day we'll get too old. There's a lot of things that, even using your physical body can be great. And Mikey saying, get to help elderly family. With COVID-19 and over 700,000 deaths, looking to the senior citizens in our lives and appreciating those moments. We don't have to do a lot of things in a developed country. We get to. My name is Alex Sheen, and I'm the founder of Because I Said I Would. To me, it's an honor to share with you a little bit of my story and a couple of habits and tactics that we work with on kids in our high school chapters and our juvenile detention centers. But the truth is, they're things that can benefit us all. And these are lessons that I did not innately understand. My father wanted me to be a person of my word, but maybe just struggled to teach me these types of things. He was naturally good at it. In fact, in some ways, it shames me to believe that my father will never see the man that I have become. But to go on that journey, we got to take a little accountability. We got to take a little bit on this chin. We got to know our limits of self-control. We've got to look at this in a realistic way with our memory, with our gratitude. There's a lot of dimensions to this. So if you're struggling with keeping promises, especially during this pandemic, if it feels difficult, that's because it is. A lot of people look at Because I Said I Would, and they say, oh, I like it. It's easy. It's simple. Just do what you said you would do. Well, if it was so simple, everybody would do it. It's not easy. So I hope these things had, maybe just one of them plays out in your life in some way. But if you've been on this call and you say, I already know all of this stuff, I'm good with my word, I appreciate you. You're someone like my dad was, and the world needs more of that. So everyone, keep fighting the good fight, especially for the kids, and appreciate your time.
Could we just give Alex a virtual round of applause, or you could either react with an emoji or in the chat box? That was wonderful, Alex, and thank you so much for sharing with us the story and message behind Because I Said I Would, and the importance of a promise as well. It is our challenge to apply this message to our everyday lives, and we appreciate your insights, especially the new 5 ones that you brought up on upholding promises, especially around accountability and just overall understanding the importance that actions do matter. So it is now time for question and answer. So there are two ways to interact with Alex. At this point, you can either click your reaction button to raise your hand, or you can type in your questions in the chat box, and you will be brought on screen just as I am with Alex right now, as he entertains your questions. So to get us started, Alex, you share with us a lot about keeping promises. So what happens when we don't, or if we break one?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. The first thing I would say is that we've got to beware of the knee-jerk reaction that most people have, which is, I broke this promise, I should make a bigger one, right? I need to make up ground for the disappointment that I have put into this person's life. And why are you doing that? Because you're a decent person and you want to correct things. That's good. But what might be more reasonable is actually to make a smaller promise and actually get that done, slowly earn that trust back. It's possible that you may need to step away from this situation entirely. Do I like that? No, I'm literally the founder of Because I Said I Would. I do think that you should follow through and sometimes make your life a little difficult to make life better for others, right? I don't know, it's a personal belief. But the point there being, I'm also wanting to recognize that sometimes, you're past your ability, your limits, your budget. Maybe you're having emotional or mental health challenges at the moment, right? You've got to draw some lines. We don't want to use that as an excuse too often, but I do think that people are in some sort of weird promise economy where we always have to make bigger and bigger promises to make ourselves look good or something. I don't know. And we end up breaking a lot of those commitments. So when you break a promise, I would knee jerk with, or watch the knee jerk reaction. The second thing I would say is that when you break a promise, try to separate real reasons from your apology. I like to put a gap in it. So let's say I was late to this call, which I would never do. So let's say I was late. I would say to Carrie, I would say, hey, Carrie, I'm not here to waste your time. I said I was going to, I also like to point out, like I literally made a promise. I said, Carrie, I'm not here to waste your time. I promised you I was going to be here at 12 and I didn't do that. And you don't deserve that. And I'm sorry. But then Carrie responds. We go back and forth a little bit. She expresses, I let her vent, right? She deserves it, right? I would want that. So she's like, well, Alex, we had a lot of things riding on this, et cetera, et cetera. And I say, and I understand, and I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention I was letting my dog out. He ran out the door, and I had to chase him because I live in a busy area. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses because, to be honest, I should have had him on a leash, and there's a lot of things. But what I'm doing is I'm spacing those out. A lot of people, when they apologize, they put them right together. Oh, my dog went out. I'm so sorry, man. You know how that is, these dogs. So anyways, let's get the call started. I'm sorry I'm late. And Carrie feels like, well, I guess you don't care that there's 73 people here waiting for you, Alex. So that separation is good. And sometimes why we say those reasons or excuses, whatever it is on the spectrum, why do we say those? Well, we want that person to say, oh, what happened is reasonable, right? I still respect you. Oh, in those conditions, that would have happened to me. I still respect you, right? That would be fine. I get it now. I respect you still. Don't worry. Well, you want to know one of the best ways to get respect in this whole entire world is to admit that you're wrong, that you've made a mistake. There's not many moments that are that visceral in a person's life. And so I think that's really what builds respect. Now, can you just keep breaking promises over and over and over again and use this formula and think you're going to have a reputation? No, of course not. There's a point of no return, where it doesn't matter what you do or how you apologize. That person doesn't owe you much, and they can separate, sever, or just not respect you. That's their personal choice, justified or not. And that's why we can't really risk it. And we should keep our promises, et cetera, et cetera. Awesome. So thank you, Candace, for that question. Let's look at Rachel's got her hand raised. Rachel, we're going to bring you on screen. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Those are massive lockers behind you, and you're really close to them. but I would love to
The
take a
virtual background, but thank you for noticing. So I was thinking a lot about just like the work that all of us do as educators, right? With our colleagues, with other educators, with students, and what you talked about like modeling and accountability. Like how can we create a space beyond the modeling where it's safe for our colleagues or our students to like show that accountability, to
Yeah.
apologize in a way that won't have negative consequences?
Yeah, I think creating dedicated times for this type of social emotional learning is good, right? I feel like anything that's sort of spur of the moment has emotional spikes that sometimes aren't as productive. So for me, our charity does 9 character development workshops or SEL workshops each year with our high school students, and giving them a routine to express themselves is good, right? Giving them a spot in the schedule where it's like, oh, that's when I do that, versus always addressing problems, challenges in the heat of the moment. This is actually something like a marriage therapist would tell you, right? And I'm no mental health professional, but I have had trouble in relationships. So anyways, the point there being is that they say, like, just schedule a time with your significant other every week to talk about challenges. You're outside the heat of the moment. It's expected. It's not like this out of the blue thing. It's not strange. It's not foreign. This is just what we do. And that expectation just softens things a little bit, gets people to listen. And so maybe not the perfect answer, Rachel, but I think getting in a routine where you can express yourself in one way or another can be helpful. Awesome. Kristen, got your hand raised. And remember, anybody can type questions in the chat. You can ask me what it's like to go viral, other ways to keep promises. How shiny is Steve Harvey's head in real life? I got these answers. Okay, but Kristen is on screen with me. Kristen, first, where are you from?
Hamden, Maine.
Okay, Hamden, Maine. Awesome. I've spoken to the University of Maine a couple times up there. Hope the colors are looking good right about now. But
It's
I'd love to take a question.
beautiful here right now. It's gorgeous, and I try to make myself look at it every day without driving off the road. So I didn't really have a question, but I want to make a comment.
Yeah.
And Rachel knows me pretty well, so when she hears me say this, she'll know that's a really big deal. I was wrong yesterday. And in the middle of my AP class about something, and I said, I am wrong. I apologize. And it made a very big difference in the moment. And it was not a terrible big deal, but it was just something that it was about an assignment, and I thought they hadn't really followed the direction, blah, blah, blah. But I felt it was really important for me to do that. And one student raised his hand and he said, do you know how seldom anybody in your position does that? I was like, I didn't expect that big a response, but I think it was a really important step in the relationship that I have with those students to do that. So.
Yeah, and Suzanne in the chat, Kristen, she mentioned the same thing. Kids are always shocked and amazed when adults apologize, to them. And
we were not brought up with that. Our parents never apologized.
It's kind of weird, though. Like you expect kids to grow up to do that, but we don't ever do that. That doesn't make any sort of sense, mechanically almost. And so I appreciate you doing that. And sometimes the way I measure how good an apology is, or that admission of accountability, it's a weird thing, but the more uncomfortable it is and the more silence there is, it's kind of better. Like I can imagine, Kristen, you standing in front of everybody saying, I'm wrong and I apologize. And then everyone's just like, what?
You okay?
And that's how it's kind of good. It's like when this person's soaking in this almost, I don't want to say embarrassment, but they're soaking in an uncomfortable moment because, sometimes we got to do that. It doesn't have to be this punitive thing where it's like you're a terrible person for the rest of your life. No, people break promises, people are wrong, and water is wet, okay? It's something that happens, and it's something that is, and we don't have to always avoid it. so much. So Kristen, thank you again for that perspective.
Thank you.
Awesome. I got a question that came in through a direct message. Any recommendations for allowing people to make amends, repair their promises? How do we be more receptive to that? A couple of thoughts there. The first thing is when people break promises to me, and honestly, even if they don't, even if it's like a new relationship, I kind of expect things to not happen. We can call that negative. We can call that my life experience, but I'm very aware at people's batting averages and the overall average of humanity. And sometimes I don't have that much confidence. Okay. So how when you've broken promises to someone or someone's skeptical, right? How do you repair that? Well, the first thing I would say is show them the plan. Forget the promise. Forget that you're going to do this great thing and make up for it or whatever. Literally show them physically what you're doing. Say, well, I put it on my calendar and I actually invited you to it. I sent another message to it. I'm going to text you on that day. In fact, I put a calendar entry that says I'm going to text you on the day, so I don't even forget to text you that. You see what I'm saying? Like, people believe plans, and it's weird. What I just said, almost nobody does with me, right? I don't really see it a lot. But that is what I've witnessed works, is when you take this sort of weird moment where you lay it out, you show them literally a document or an email or a calendar, again, is the best for me. And that, I think, helps make amends, helps show a genuine initiative. Talk is cheap. Intention, these words, even writing it on a card, this is a 1 cent piece of paper. This is just a symbol. This is not a plan. And so that's what I start to believe. I start to believe plans, and that starts to repair a relationship. Dr. Thomas said, I just had a similar conversation with my bar student yesterday, shared that I'm sorry, and will you forgive me are the hardest, but most important things to say. They agreed, and bravery behind being on the other side of the screen has caused many to forget to account for the feelings of others. Let's talk about that for a second. And Bar Center team, stop me if I keep going too long. I don't even know when we stop. But the point is, let's talk about technology just for a second. Okay, the year is May 6, 1985, right? May 6, 1985, Alex Sheen is born on that day. And let's say on that day, somewhere in the United States, you were going to meet a friend for a movie. You're going to go watch a movie together. Okay. It's 1985. You are at the movie. It's 8 o'clock. It's Thursday. We know that that's the time. And that person doesn't show up. There is no cell phone, right? You can't call. Even if you went to a payphone, they're not going to be at their house and you'd be driving. You literally thought the person was dead. You're like, what happened to them? I hope they're okay, et cetera, right? Because there's no way to get in touch with them. But today, that same scenario happens 10 minutes, 5 minutes, even after maybe the movie starts, right? You say, oh man, something came up with kids, can't come. Okay, so what are some of the dynamics there? One, used to be you had to hear the quiver in someone's voice. You had to look them in the face and tell them that you broke a promise. You had that accountability that almost biologically as humans we're like, well, I'd rather just do it than to have to disappoint this person and go through that conversation, right? We don't have that anymore. You just text the person. We hide behind the screen. Accountability forces are lowered, and when you lower that, people are more likely to break promises. The second dynamic that technology brings to us in this sort of supply and demand curve type of way is that it is easier to make promises. What do I mean by that? Just press yes on a Facebook invite, right? Yes to the calendar invite, right? Just say yes in a text message. The more mediums you have to communicate, the more convenient it is to communicate, it is also more convenient to make promises. So we're making more promises, the volume is higher, and the accountability to those promises are lower, creating, two different directions that aren't so great. And maybe that's why people don't really honor their word as much anymore. So that's just a perspective that popped in my mind, Cami, as you were talking about that concept of being behind a screen. It's easier to be less human behind this screen, I believe. So with that, I appreciate everybody's time and their questions, their perspectives. I hope you connect with us on social media and all that good stuff. But I wanted to share with you something that's developed since the last time that we talked. Because I said I would is in a long process, so we'll see if it happens. But we are actively in the process to purchase like 100-acre summer camp. And our goal is to work with the kids through social emotional learning, through some difficult things. Our kids will write promises like, I will not kill myself. And they need more help than we can provide them sometimes in the workshops that Because I Said I Would does just once a month. These residential experiences are going to make a big difference. And I say all of this to you because, how am I getting the funding to make this possible? Because of speaking engagements like this, 100% of my speaking engagement fees go to the charity. I've been nesting funding. I've been working with our donors, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate Barr Center's support for the work that we're doing, and more importantly, to changing the lives of these kids who have some pretty unfair journeys ahead of them. So thank you again for all of your attention. Go to BecauseISaidIWould.org if you want to see videos and things like that, and have a good week. All right. Peace.
Thank you so much, Alex. And thank you to all who took the opportunity to join us today. We know you all have such busy schedules, but again, this is recorded and will be included in the Friday email for you all to review and share with your faculty and staff for those who weren't able to attend. And until next time, be safe, be well, and we look forward to seeing you in November for our next PLC.